Welcome back, friends. Uh, the today's video is about like core Java interview questions that are usually asked for junior to mid-level Java developers. So if you are a junior Java developer and you want some kind of guidance of what questions to prepare for, the this video is for you. So here I am compiling, what are like most important questions in the core Java and what are most frequently asked questions if you are trying for any kind of a phone interview or online interview or these are the questions you can expect during the Java J2EE interviews. So let's just like I compiled list of couple of like questions that we will go one by one and we will discuss also what what the interviewers can expect during the interviews answers. So let's start. So the first question is how can you create threads in Java? So there are two ways you can create threads in Java, right? You can either extend the threads class or you can implement runnable interface. So that is the question. That is the answer we should know. Threads is an important concept, so these questions often come. Um, so the second question is what are the access specifiers in Java? So there are four access specifiers in Java. Public, protected, private, and default, right? So public means those methods and variables can be accessed from anywhere basically. So that's why they are public. Protected means they are accessed by the same package or the subclasses, right? That's why we in the inherited classes we are able to access the protected variables, and the same package can also access the protected methods and class variables. Then default is the means when you don't specify any specifier, then it's a default specifier. So their default means they are accessible from that within the package where you have created the class, and private is a private to that class, so it cannot be accessed from outside the class. So that explanation you need to give when they ask for access specifiers in Java. The other question very important is static methods and static variables. So what are they? So what are static variables and methods, and why do we need those static variables and methods? So as you might already know, the static variables can be accessed without instantiating the class. So you can directly access that variables, and directly you can access the methods of that class without instant creating any instance of the class. So one very good example in the Java packages is java.lang.math, right? So math has a lot of calculation methods and all that you can directly access. So our constants you can directly access. So that is what you need to know about static methods and static variables. So those are the class levels, right? So the static variables are class level variables. So static methods are class level methods. So they are not instance level methods. So that's it is, so what is a method overloading and method overriding? This is another very typical question that often asked for in the interviews. So method overloading is you can use the same method name, but you can use different number of arguments in that method name. So that is a method overloading. And for example, let's say you have a method called as you can say calculate salary, let's say, for an employee, right? So you can pass like calculate salary. You have a method without any arguments, or you have methods with couple of arguments where you want to pass some specific arguments to the method, like your how many years of the employees working and how many department and all that. So that is method overloading. So you will have a same method name but different arguments. And method overriding means you have a method in your parent class and your child class want to override its implementation. So that is a method overriding. So that's what you need to mention in the interview. Then this is another very famous question: the difference between abstract class and interface. So abstract class and interface means abstract class is basically a class, but you cannot instantiate that class. So it is typically created when you want to specify or provide some kind of a default implementation of for the class, and the child classes will provide the remaining of the implementation, like so that is abstract class. And interface means you will have no implementation. You will just provide the abstract methods basically, and the implementation class of the interface has to implement all the methods. So in abstract class you will still have some methods that you have implemented, but in interface you will never have any methods that you implement there. So abstract class, as it has a final, non-final, static, non-static variables. Interface only has a static and final variables. So this is another difference. um, Another difference is generally, like, abstract classes are performance wise, abstract classes are little faster than interface. In interface it requires extra indirection because compiler has to find out the implementation actually, and for that interface, and it is a slow process actually. So generally abstract classes are a little faster when it comes to performance. That you can mention. And uh, yeah, I think those things you can mention. Then another question is Java pass by value, or is it a pass by reference? So that is a very famous question. So all Java developers need to know this. So Java is always pass by value. So even if you are passing any kind of objects into the methods, then still it is a pass by value, because we are passing the address of that object, as a value. So we never pass a reference. So reference will be passed as a value basically. So Java is always pass by value. So that is one important question. Another important question is what is final, finally, and finalize in Java, right? So this is I think I have seen this question most of my interviews. So final, final variables is like, once you create the final variables into class, you cannot change their values. So it's like a constant, it's fixed, you cannot change it. Then final methods means you cannot override that method once it is a final method. And once the class is final, then you cannot subclass that class. For example, string class. So string is a final class in Java, so you cannot subclass the string class. So that you have to tell. And finally is basically it's part of the try catch finally block. So you can mention that it is a part of the exception handling. And finalize is like a finalize method you can implement in Java. So that method gets called before the actual garbage collection happens. So if you want to release some kind of connections or do some kind of any cleanup or something, you can do in finalize method. So that's what you need to tell. So another question is about the Java generics, and they are saying that, can you give some examples where generics is used in Java libraries or Java APIs, right? So generics is introduced in Java 5, and like generics means previously when generics was not there, like we have to always use the typecasting of the objects, because we don't know. For example, if we are processing a list of objects, we don't know what that list will contain. But now with the generics, you can specify that whatever the array list is, what type basically you can specify, by using the brackets. You can always specify. uh, so for example, you can say you can talk about like array list of employee, right? Hash set of employee. So this is generics basically. So we have one implementation of array list, but it is generalized basically. So you can pass any generic um, uh, plain old Java objects or Java beans here basically. So that's what generics is. and you can give them examples like this, that this is where the Java libraries API uses generics. Then another question is, can we make interface final? So no, we cannot make an interface final, because the purpose of creating interface is so that the implementers can implement that interface. So that's the reason why we cannot make the interface final. What classes did you use from Java util package, and details about those classes? So you should know all these classes in details, like hashmap, hashset, tree map, array list, linked list, hash table. So these classes you should know in details. You also should know the algorithmic time complexity of those classes. Um, so for example, Hashmap is a key value pair. You can hold key value pairs. Hashset is a unique objects you can hold there. So no duplicate objects basically. Tree map is used like when you want to use a sorted order of the key, then you can use tree map. Array list and linked list both are implementation of list interface, but array list is backed. It's a array based implementation, and linked list is basically a linked list based implementation where you have nodes and you will create a linked list from that. Similarly, hash table you can mention. So these are all the important java.util classes that you can mention, that you worked on, and you should know that time complexity. Many times this question is also being asked in the interviews: time complexity of a hash maps get and put method. So typically the answer for this question is the time complexity is O1, which is constant, because that is usually the case, when we have good good hash functions where there are no collisions. Ideally O1 are constant, because you will just have one key and one value in that corresponding keys value is there. So in that case O1 is there, but sometimes there can be hash collisions, and you will end up the hash code basically, or hash bucket. The key will hold a list of objects, so you can have multiple values associated with the single key. So ideally the gate means you have to traverse through all that list actually, right, in that case, and then it becomes order of n. So that is the worst case complexity. So you can mention how it is, so why it is O1 usually, but why it can be order of n. So that's what you need to explain them. Also other question is, what features of Java 8 you worked on, or what are the new features of Java 8? So you can explain, like lambda expressions are added, streams are added, predicates, completable futures. So those are new things that are being added to Java 8, and typically like you must be able to know about streams details, how you can use streams to filter the data, or how you can use the lambda expressions in the collection sort. Those things you should know. um, then difference between hashmap and concurrent hashmap. This is another famous question. So concurrent hashmap is synchronized while hashmap is not synchronized. And concurrent hashmap also like uses a technique, like uses a concept called as segments. So in concurrent hashmap we have the map is divided into couple of segments, and only when you are updating a data, then only that specific segment gets locked, but other segments are not locked actually. So they are available for reading as well as updating. So what it means is multiple threads can at the same time they can update the concurrent hash map, which is not possible in hash map, right? So that's what you have to mention in details. uh, uh, yeah, so yeah, one other difference is hashmap is added in 1.2 JDK, and concurrent hashmap came from JDK Java 5, right? So that's what you can mention. Let's go further. So what are checked and unchecked exceptions? So checked exceptions are the exceptions which we can check in the program itself, right? For example, SQL exception. If we are doing any kind of database operations, we can check for SQL exception, or So those are the checked exceptions that we can check, but unchecked exceptions are the exceptions which can happen during the runtime. So we cannot check those exceptions, like for example null pointer exception, or array index out of bounds exception, or arithmetic exception that can happen in divide by zero case. So those are unchecked exceptions. um, One other questions sometimes ask is like, is it necessary that each try block must be followed by a catch block? So it is not necessary, but what is necessary is each try block should be followed by either a catch block or a finally block. So that is what is necessary. Is string immutable? So yes, string is immutable, so which means that once you create a string object you cannot modify it, right? So the other question is where they will give you a program, or like this string. This is a string. String 2 is also, this is a string. String 3 is equal to new string. This is a string, and they will ask you like how many string objects will be created, right? So there will be only two string objects created, because these first two, they will be pointed to the same string constant pool, right? So those two are only one object, but the third, since it is using new string, then it will be created in the heap and it will be another string object. So one object for this plus one object for this is equal to two objects. Then what is the difference between string buffer and string builder? So string buffer is synchronized, right, and string builder is not synchronized. That's why string buffer is slow. String builder is fast because it's not synchronized. So that's what you can mention. And they might ask you to write one class which is immutable, right? So you should be able to write a immutable class like this. So this is a employee class where this is a final. We mention final here because it is, we want that class to be immutable, and all the member like variables are also final, right? And we are passing those values during the constructor. So there is no other way you can modify it later, and you can just only have a getter there, you can get the values. So that's how we can make a class immutable. Then other question comes as how you can implement equals and hash code method. So this one, sometimes they will ask you to actually write the code, that you have to write the code of how you will implement the equals and hash code in Java, right? They will give you one object or one bean class like employee or anything with couple of fields, and they will ask you to implement the equals and hash code method. So this comes during the whiteboarding or online, where you are writing a code. So as you can see in hash code, we can actually start with a prime number, and then we will keep multiplying with this prime number with the fields actually, and that's how we will create the hash code. Like here ID, first name, last name, salary, those fields are there, but we will always keep multiplying with the prime number, so our hash code will be robust basically. So to avoid hash collisions, so our hash code function should mostly generate unique hash codes. So this is how we can write the hash code. So you can mention that you will use a prime number during the implementation, and this is how you will implement it. And you have to also consider all the fields actually of your bin class here, and then finally you will return the result that you created here, right? And in equals, you just have to, this is for the objects equality. So you can check, if this is equal to object, then they are pointing to the same location, means you will return true. If object is coming as a null, then obviously you will return false. Then you will check the classes of both the objects. If they are not same, you will return false. If this is not the case, then you are going to cast that obj with the like, let's say for example employee here, and then you will compare each and every field, and at the end you will say that if every field matches with each other, you will return true. So which means that both objects are same. So this is how you can implement it. So another question is when to use array list versus linked list. So this is also asked, so if you have to do lot of additions and deletions, then you can go with linked list because it is faster in that case. If you are doing more searches, then you should go with a array list. So Other question is, if you have an employee object and you have some sensitive fields, like let's say for example account number, right? Then how what you should do actually? So you have to tell them that the sensitive fields you will make transient, right? So they will not get serialized. During serialized, those fields will not get serialized. So what are performance implications? So we already discussed this, right? That interfaces are slower, right? Because of the extra indirection that is required. uh, then let's just go forward. So this is another example. They will give you couple of strings and how many objects will be created. So here as you can see, s1 and s3 means it is the same object. You can see same string, right? So that will be same string literal, so that is a one object, and this one is another literal, so this is second object. So you can say two objects get created here. And let's just quickly glance through it. They might ask you questions like what is a linked hash map, right? So this is a new addition in the Java util. It is a implementation of map interface where it actually maintains the order of insertion. So if you are inserting into map, hash map does not maintain the order of insertion. So if you need that order, then you should go with the linked hash map, you know. So I think apart from that, you should know, how to implement any sorting algorithm. You should know, how to implement binary search, how to implement linked list, stack, doubly linked list. So those are the questions. And you should also know for the string what is the difference between equals and double equals operator, right? So equals mean it actually compares the value of the string, and double equals operator will compare if they are the same addresses, if both strings are the referring to the same addresses. So that's what they will compare. So I think that's pretty much it for the video is getting long. So I think I will be putting this document into my GitHub repository. You can also refer it there. So I hope this will help you in your Java core Java interviews. Try to prepare these questions. These are very important questions. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click on the like button. Thanks for watching the video.